Hey guys, DarthLord1997 here again, and today, May 20th, is the 20th anniversary of the TriStar remake of Godzilla, released in 1998. Just like what I did for my Cloverfield 10 years look back, I'm going to be taking a moment to look back on this movie 20 years later and give my thoughts on the film and the legacy this movie has made. However, since this film is so controversial in the kaiju fan community, I feel like I alone cannot look back on this movie and do it justice. So I reached out to my friend here on YouTube to help me. Welcome, 93Monstermike.
Salve, fellow YouTubers! It is I, 93Monstermike, and I'm joining DarthLord1997 here so that we can both look back on this movie and give our thoughts.
We've been planning a crossover like this for a while now, since we both upload similar style videos, and we thought this movie would be the perfect opportunity. After all, I'm not sure a lot of Godzilla YouTubers would care to discuss this movie, and I think this movie does deserve some discussion.
For this collaborative video, we decided to use a Q&A style video, where we each answer a question regarding this movie to discuss topics and share our thoughts.
This video is basically an experiment for the both of us, to see how our video styles and opinions on one subject work together in one video. If you guys like this video and think we should try more, let us know. Okay, let's get started. So, as previously mentioned, this movie is now 20 years old. A lot has happened in the kaiju world since then. Some of it as the result of this very movie, but we'll get to that. I guess we'll start with the first question. Question 1. Our first memories of seeing this movie.
Okay, well, I actually did not see the movie in theaters when it came out. I had no idea about an American Godzilla movie coming out in the theaters at all. I did hear about it through the Trendmasters toy line. I still have some of them in my collection, but I'm pretty sure it would have been interesting to see the movie in theaters. I didn't see the movie until it was released on home video, and I saw it with one of my cousins at his home during a little family get-together. I then acquired a VHS copy of the movie with my dad at Target sometime later, and that was how I got to see the entire movie. So what was it like for you seeing this movie for the first time?
Well, like you, I didn't see this movie in theaters. I was really young back then. And also coincidentally, I went to my cousin's house, and he and my aunt showed me this movie on VHS. This movie was actually my second Godzilla movie, right after Godzilla vs. Megalon. I remember seeing the VHS of this thing in stores everywhere, especially Blockbuster Video. And to you kids watching this, just Google that or ask your parents about that store. My parents eventually got us our own VHS, and I still have it. Of course, one day the kid inside gets bored of rewinding the tape over and over, so I recently got the DVD for this movie at a gas station. But yeah, I don't remember everything about my first viewing, but it must have been a blast, judging by my opinion on this film today. Which brings us to our next topic. What do you like about this movie?
What I did like about the movie was, for starters, the action scenes. A lot of them were fast-paced, provided a lot of creature footage, and some shots showed the monster moving in ways that the Japanese Godzilla would not do in some of the movies, and the classic man versus monster scenario. Although I was used to Godzilla being a guy in a latex-coated foam suit, the special effects for many scenes were rather pleasing to my eye at the time the movie came out. At least some of the scenes were done with animatronics, and the babies were done with guys in suits. The musical score for the movie was also important to note, because some of the scenes, like when the title monster came out of the water for the first time at the Fulton Fish Market in New York City, and roaring as people look up in awe and terror, I get goosebumps every time I think about it or rewatch it. Finally, I like how the creature was spawned from nuclear tests in the Pacific, just like the original Godzilla. It is also heartwarming to hear Godzilla's name in English and Japanese in the film, although a lot of people think the Japanese are saying Godzilla or Godzilla or something like that. It is actually Gojira. Although without this movie, none of the fans would have had the awesome animated series that aired on Fox Kids back in the late 90s to early 2000s. Another thing I liked was the marketing for the movie. Toys, music albums, clothing, fast food toys, drinking cups, so on and so forth. It was way more diverse than when the 2014 Godzilla came out into theaters. What about you?
Well, there's a lot I like about this movie. So grab some popcorn, some torches, and pitchforks. I'll start with some of the things you mentioned. Most of the effects are amazing. I'll get into why I said most in a bit. A lot of people mock this film's use of CGI technology, however I think the CGI looks amazing for 1998. You have to understand, CGI was only a few years old, so the strategy hadn't really been perfected yet. I think the CGI effects of Godzilla are really good. Most people don't know that a lot of practical effects were used. This film took an approach to the effects like Jurassic Park did. If only part of the creature was shown or it was a close-up shot, chances are you were looking at an animatronic. When you watch the behind the scenes of this movie, the animatronics look amazing. They even made a classic rubber suit for the big guy himself for some shots. Some of the destruction was also miniature work. The destruction of the fish pier and the Chrysler building were some examples of practical effects, just slowed down to add some suspense. Now, were all the effects good? No. I think the CGI on the infant Godzillas when they're in herds is really bad. The effects look like a straight-to-DVD movie. The soundtrack for this film is also amazing. David Arnold wrote a fantastic soundtrack, and when I listen to it, I can see the film in my mind. The opening score, as well as the opening scene as a whole for this movie, is amazing. Also, like you said, the marketing campaign for this movie, genius! They knew how to build up hype back then. Because the internet was still getting on its feet, people on the web couldn't cripple any build-up tension like they do today. From the buses that said, "His foot's as big as this bus," to the awesome Taco Bell Godzilla cup holder, this movie was everywhere. And I love how none of them, except Taco Bell, showed the entire monster, leaving Godzilla fans with a mystery on how the very first successful American remake of The King of the Monsters would look like. I'll get some of my other likes off quickly. I like most of the cast. The fact that they got actors from The Simpsons to be in a Godzilla movie is so stupid and weird, it's hilarious. One of them, Hank Azaria, plays my favorite character in the whole movie, Animal. His performance is one of the things that makes this movie entertaining to watch to me. I could go on for a while, but we need to move on. Now let's go the opposite route. What don't you like about this movie?
What I did not like about the film, and I think many G fans agree with me on this, is that the movie is called Godzilla. It didn't behave like the Godzilla I knew at the time. Looking back, it behaved more like an actual animal acting on sheer instinct. The creature mostly ran away from the military too much. He barely used his breath weapon, even though it was just exhaling flammable gas like methane or something like that. Making him reproduce asexually or having offspring at all, the babies acting too much like the raptors from Jurassic Park, and killing the title monster with missiles. I was also kind of surprised that Godzilla didn't fight any other giant monsters in the movie, because at that time, I was used to seeing Godzilla duke it out with other kaiju, like Ibira or Megalon or Gigan or something like that. The main plot was okay, but some of the subplots were kinda like the old flame relationships, or even character development like Audrey Timmons, played by Maria Patillo, struggling with getting a promotion from her superior. Your thoughts?
Even though I like a lot of things from this movie, there are some really bad flaws. First, while I said I liked most of the cast, Matthew Broderick, really? While he does a great job when he's delivering dialogue involving Godzilla's origin, like his "Dawn of a New Species" speech, when the situation calls for suspense or comedy, no, we're not mentioning that line. He just doesn't cut it. However, Maria Patillo's performance as Audrey Ugh. I don't like criticizing people's acting because I know it's harder than it looks. But come on, she's so dull. It makes her relationship with Nick feel so forced. I also agree with the whole military thing, but I wouldn't call Gino's actions running away, more of a strategic withdrawal. I say that because this creature still impresses me when he outsmarts the helicopters during the chase scene and faking his own death twice. You have to understand, he wasn't there to fight. His goal was reproduction. Now, since I brought that up, do I like that idea for a kaiju? Yes. I'll get into that in the next question. But for a portrayal of Godzilla, no. The Gino baby scene doesn't really bother me as much as it does others, but for a Godzilla movie, it really doesn't fit. The idea of Gino being killed by missiles is my biggest problem with this film. I'll explain more soon, but now for our next topic. What are your thoughts on this interpretation of Godzilla, now referred to as Zilla?
For a while, I did refer to this creature as the American Godzilla, though that title now kind of basically goes to the 2014 version. So I could always remember that there was more than one Godzilla. Nowadays, I'm not that okay with calling the creature Godzilla. I think the name Zilla is much more of a compromise to the hardcore fans of the Japanese Godzilla, as well as hardcore fans of this creature, who basically immediately think, this is Godzilla, this is the one that I grew up with, and all that stuff. I liked some of the aspects of the creature's design, though. I did like the digitigrade legs, his roar being very Godzilla-esque, and also admire the fact that we see how this creature does what it can to survive, like eating a lot of fish to get his nutrition. Speaking of his roar, a lot of the sound effects for Zilla and its offspring were provided with elephant vocalizations, the Showa Godzilla, and legendary voice actor Frank Welker. To our viewers, if you don't know who Frank Welker is, shame on you! He voiced Fred Jones from Scooby-Doo, the original G1 Megatron, Dr. Claw from Inspector Gadget, Abu from Aladdin, Slimer and Ray Stantz from the Real Ghostbusters animated series. I mean, this guy's a legend. I still just can't believe that Toho approved the design of Zilla by Patrick Tatopoulos by his artwork. But his artwork at him is really good. But it's not Patrick Tatopoulos' fault. It's basically Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin saying that they wanted Zilla to be fast, you know? But it is interesting to note that Patrick gave Zilla the huge chin and underbite, which is basically a nod to Shere Khan from Disney's original animated adaptation of The Jungle Book, to evoke the feeling of being majestic and opposing at the same time. Overall, I like Zilla as an individual kaiju and being its own species. Being identified as Godzilla is somewhat of a mistake. It's like comparing a Komodo dragon to an alligator. So how does Zilla measure up to your criteria?
I actually really like him. Now, depending on how we're looking at him, my opinion is different. As a Godzilla, this guy falls short, but I don't discard him from the Godzilla lineup entirely. I do have him on my Godzilla shelf, but I made sure to put him in that other section. I'm not a fan of the lack of atomic breath, replacing that with a flammable gas breath. So, propane breath? The design is also very radically different. However, I can see that as Godzilla. Barely. It does stick out like a sore thumb when compared to the other designs. A lot of people don't realize, like you pointed out, they had to show that to Toho. And Toho looked at that, and they approved it. I am a little surprised they did like you are, but they did. They showed that, and they said, yep, that's Godzilla. Run with it. Now, as his own separate kaiju, Zilla, I love the character and design. He looks so cool. I also like his speed and agility, something not common in Godzilla's roster of monsters. I also like his asexual reproduction idea. It gives me a feeling of the movie Them or Aliens, something like that. They even used that in Godzilla Monster Apocalypse, the prequel novel to the animated Godzilla trilogy, with the idea of if you let one get away, there'll be hundreds more. I wish people would stop taking the fact he was killed by missiles too far and having him be a pushover, but I do see where that hate comes from. Now let's move on. What would you change about this movie?
What would I change? Well, for starters, maybe the casting of some of the characters. Dialogue for the script definitely needed a lot of work. The design of the monster, and also maybe the fate of the monster in the film. Like James Rolfe, the angry video game nerd, said, it might as well have been a remake of The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. It followed the basic idea of a giant reptilian creature, but it could have been almost anything. I mean, don't get me wrong. Zilla's design is very interesting, but personally, I like an earlier design of Godzilla in the earlier draft of the film by the late Stan Winston, in which it basically had the overall silhouette of the original Godzilla, but he had digitigrade legs and tail exactly like a crocodile or alligator, but basically looked a lot like a Godzilla, but mixed with what dinosaurs looked like at the time. That's personally what I would change if I ever had the chance to do so. What about you?
What would I do? Get a better leading role. Matthew Broderick wasn't the worst choice, but there could have been much better options, and the same goes for Maria's Audrey character. I would also change Godzilla's design to look like the Stan Winston design, but not that Atlantis-based origins for Godzilla that script had. However, I wouldn't want to disregard the Zilla design and character entirely. Maybe keep him around as an opponent for Godzilla. Sort of like the 2014 movie where Godzilla's trying to stop the Mutos from reproducing, something like that. Also, the being killed by missiles ending can just be thrown in the trash can. Maybe something like Nick being able to develop a weapon specifically for Godzilla, mirroring the Oxygen Destroyer from the original. Okay, so now for our last question. Do you overall like or dislike this movie? Do you think it deserved the backlash it has received?
Overall, for what the film is, I think the movie is an average giant monster running around in a densely populated metropolitan area film. But I'm still kind of bummed that it has the title Godzilla. It doesn't mean that I hate the movie, but it also doesn't mean I absolutely love the movie. It's kind of like an argument of which Batman or Spider-Man movie is the best. Like Michael Keaton or Christian Bale as Batman, or Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield or whoever the new guy is that's playing Spider-Man. Sorry, I don't remember his name at the time. But thankfully, this movie did bring Godzilla back from hibernation in Godzilla 2000. It doesn't mean that Zilla is to be forgotten, nor neglected. I mean, we have GMK, Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All Out Attack, which made a very nice nod about it in the beginning of the film, and in Godzilla Final Wars, it proved who was the real Godzilla. In the 2014 Godzilla movie, I wish it kind of came out earlier. But the 2014 film did bring justice to Godzilla for American movie studios. Without Zilla, I wouldn't have had a basis for the overall design of my kaiju Dralagon, nor that incredibly awesome animated series that followed the movie. What about you, Dark Lord 1997?
Overall, I really enjoy this monster movie. I even say, as a monster movie, not a Godzilla movie, I like this film better than the 2014 movie. I look at this movie as a popcorn monster movie, and it fills that title perfectly. Did it deserve the backlash? For calling this film Godzilla, yes. But some things about this movie I feel fans were a little too harsh on. I think this film got what it properly deserved in the Zilla battle in Godzilla Final Wars. Anything after that was a bit much. However, I completely understand where the hate comes from. However, like you said, without this movie and the backlash it received, we never would have gotten the Millennium series of Toho's Godzilla films, including my favorite Godzilla movie, Godzilla, Mothra and King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All Out Attack. Now, would I put this movie in my top 5 Godzilla movies? That might be pushing this film's luck for me. However, it's definitely not at the bottom. I think there are Toho-made Godzilla movies that, like Godzilla's Revenge and Godzilla vs. Hedorah, that are just unbearable to watch for me. And so that brings us to the end of this discussion. Well, I guess this is it then. This has been fun. It was great having you here, 93Monstermike.
My pleasure, Darth Lord 1997. Maybe we should do this again sometime. Feel free to keep in touch. Until then, this has been 93Monstermike. Wale!
See ya, Monster Mike. Well, that's my cue to leave then. And so that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let us know if you want us to try stuff like this more in the future, and I will see you guys next time.